This week on Jersey Matters, the Republican legislators ignore a vaccine mandate leading to a state house showdown. We'll talk with one of the leaders of the revolt, Assemblyman Brian Bergen. Do masks violate the First Amendment rights of children? It's a New Jersey case that could go to the Supreme Court. We'll talk with lead attorney Bruce Affron. Having a difficult time reading the exit signs on the Garden State Parkway? You're not alone. Jersey Matters investigates. And we'll visit with the creator of one of the best free Christmas lights displays in New Jersey. Welcome to Jersey Matters. I'm Larry Menti. We start with a high-powered State House protest against a vaccine mandate at the State House. I spoke with one of the leaders of the Republican revolt, Assemblyman Brian Bergen from the 25th Legislative District, which represents parts of Somerset and Morris counties. Thanks for joining us. Good to see you as always. You've been getting a lot of media coverage recently because of what they're calling a standoff at the State House. You were going against the vaccine mandate that was put on you and the other legislators at the State House. I want to go through some of what I read. You were called a liar. You were called a hypocrite. They said you claim you were fighting for freedom. You're not. I could go on. Yep. Most of the media hasn't been kind at what you're trying to do. How do you respond?
Look, it's rough. They've been rough on me from time to time, and calling me a liar is a bit over the top for me. I mean, I'm a West Point grad. I take my integrity very seriously. And the reason that they called me a liar in that particular article was because the National Guard showed up one day down at the State House, and I tweeted out that the National Guard was there to enforce the mandates. It turned, I didn't call the commander and get a briefing first on what they were doing. I just saw the National Guard there, and it was a cause for concern, and I think rightfully so. It turns out they were just there to set up testing tents to test legislators, but we're splitting hairs here. I mean, the National Guard was called into the State House to do things to prevent legislators from getting in there. And it's a bad thing. And I wasn't lying about it. Did they only set up tents and leave? Yes. But I happen to think that the state of New Jersey should have some other resources to set up tents than the National Guard.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between a mistake and a lie. One takes intent. And so it did seem a little bit over the top, but there was, I thought, some legitimate criticism when they were saying that you're doing this now because it's affecting you. And they claimed that the Republicans at the State House were not there when there were other mandates that affected citizens of New Jersey. Is that fair?
No, I don't think that's fair. I was the person who introduced the piece of legislation back in May of 2020 to restrict the governor's executive order powers. I introduced that legislation and we motioned it onto the floor 4 times. We've been doing everything in our legislative power to curtail the executive order powers and the unilateral actions of the governor since this thing started. But this time, there was an opportunity presented to us here to take a firm stance on something, not because it applied to us. And so everybody understands, we didn't do this or take this approach because of it affected the legislators. The reason why we took the stance down in Trenton is because we believed, let me speak for me, I believe that if I acquiesce to a policy that has me showing proof of a vaccine or proof of a negative test to get in the State House, I am, without saying the words, I am blessing off that it is then okay to have those types of policies in restaurants and hotels and bars and gyms. By me doing nothing, I'm essentially agreeing that it's okay. And I am nervous for a future in which, you and your family, whether you're all vaccinated, if you're all vaccinated, you go to dinner at a restaurant, one of your family members forgets their vaccine card and now you can't have a nice dinner. That's the future we're headed towards. So we didn't do this because we were upset that members of the legislative body couldn't get in there. This was our opportunity to take a stance against this type of policy that I believe is wholly unfair, very discriminatory, and a slippery slope towards a future I don't want to see.
You said something in that answer that I think is going to concern a lot of people, that you think that we are headed there at this point.
Well, this is, in my opinion, this is an indicator. This is the start of those types of policies. I mean, why would we, if they're going to put these types of restrictions on the State House, I would have to believe that is the future that they predict, because we have been going to the State House for over a year, getting our temperature taken. We wore masks. We have plexiglass shields around each of the spots where we sit. We've been doing this for a year, and now this type of policy is being instituted. There has to be an ulterior motive. This has to be the first step in their decisions to take this to a broader reach. And that's why we fought so hardly against this.
So your assumption is they want to push back early, a preemptive strike against the argument that you're mandating this for us, but not for yourselves.
Oh,
And
that's
they,
right.
But
No, you're exactly right. And oh, by the way, the whole time we were there in the State House, we made sure that we made known the objection is not to just us. It's the public's access to the State House they're restricting. That's far more important than us. We just happen to have the ability afforded to us by the Constitution of the United States, or of the state of New Jersey, to walk past those state troopers, because they do not have the legal authority to arrest us. So we used our leverage and the protections that the Constitution of the state of New Jersey gives us to make a point on behalf of everybody in the state and to prevent this slippery slope.
so what's next? I mean, if it was just that, that's not enough. That got attention, but it really has no teeth. What's next?
Well, we have discussions coming up in my caucus this week. We have a session coming up on Monday, and we have to decide on an approach that we think will get us the results that we want. And again, the results that we're looking for here is to stand in the way of vaccine mandates and have people having to show proof of vaccine and negative test to go have dinner at a restaurant or to go to your local gym. We think that's way too far, and that's what we're trying to stop.
Yeah, but you're one of the leaders in this pushback. What would you like to see?
Look, I would like to see the State House come to, or I would like to see the Speaker, the Governor, the Senate President, whoever is the man behind the curtain here with these policies, to come to some kind of compromise and to put policies in place that do protect public health. That's very important, to protect public health, but do it in a meaningful and in a way that makes sense and that's not discriminatory. One example I've given previously is, if you want to test to make sure people don't have COVID coming in there, I am totally okay with that. Test everybody. Because if somebody doesn't have a vaccine in the current policy, if somebody doesn't have a vaccine, they must get tested. If somebody does have the vaccine, they don't have to get tested. It's a fact at this point that somebody with a vaccine could still have COVID. If their intention is to prevent COVID from coming in the building, test us all. As long as the policy is not discriminatory, I'm okay with it.
It doesn't seem like the Republicans in the State House, it doesn't seem like that. It's a reality. You don't have the power to probably get this compromised or to force your will unless you do it through the courts.
Well, no. So I think what we've demonstrated is that we do have the power. I think far too long, Republicans have believed that being in the minority is always a weak position. But being in the minority, you can find strength if you utilize your leverage. We used our leverage last time. Our leverage there was we could walk around the state troopers with the protection of the Constitution and take our seats and take a stand. There's other ways to utilize leverage. There are ways to be disruptive, that speak on every bill, cause sessions to go longer, not allow them to get all the work done that they want to get done. There are other ways to be disruptive and to utilize our leverage in the minority to get to make good policy. And I think we're going to do that. And I think that the Democrats now have realized that we are fed up. And this whole notion they have of we're the majority and we will steamroll you at will and you will comply with us is not going to be what we accept any longer. And where we find leverage, we will use it. We found it the other day. We used it effectively. There are other ways to do it, and we'll do it again and again and again. So I hope there's some compromise, because none of us want people to be in danger. None of us want to even go through this. We want to go there, do our jobs, debate on the floor, and come up with good legislation. So we don't want this. I don't want this. But in the absence of compromise, in the absence of us coming to the table and getting things done that make sense, we will push back in every way we can.
Well, we'll all be watching. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you, sir. I had a great time.
Republican Assemblyman Brian Bergen. Next on Jersey Matters, one loss in federal court, but the legal fight against the mask mandate in New Jersey schools continues. We'll talk with attorney Bruce Afrin next.